Back to the herd. I'm Danny Parkins in for Colin. We'll have Herd Line with Ashley in just a little bit. So I'm an older millennial. I was looking it up. Technically, Brandon Aiyuk is at the very top of the Gen Z world because I am not on TikTok. But I feel like I get TikTok through my Instagram reels. It's very confusing. But I was alerted to the fact that Brandon Aiyuk is flirting with the Commanders via TikTok. And I was like, that's just a weird sentence. I don't understand it fully. I don't know how to check it. I went to his TikTok and it wasn't there. I was like, I don't really get it. But apparently it's true. Brandon Aiyuk shared a screen grab of a Commanders play suggesting that he was watching Commanders film, which, you know, I wouldn't do on my time off just for fun unless I was maybe planning on going to the Commanders. So it led to speculation about Brandon Aiyuk's future. And make no mistake, like, I think people sometimes lump everybody together in San Francisco because 2 through 53, it's the best roster in the NFL. Brandon Aiyuk is an in his prime, excellent football player, full stop. He's 26 years old. He had 75 catches last year. He had over 1,300 yards. He is excellent. But like we were talking about with CeeDee Lamb, can't pay everybody. And it seems inevitable based on them drafting a receiver, based on the commitments that they have elsewhere, based on a potential upcoming commitment that we'll talk about in a second to Brock Purdy, that his days in San Francisco are numbered. I know Steelers fans want him there. He would make every team in the NFL better. But what this makes me think about more directly than Brandon Aiyuk, because, of course, he would make Washington better. He'd make Jaden Daniels' life easier. He'd make Russell Wilson's life easier. Like, the Brandon Aiyuk portion of this is pretty straightforward. We see receivers get traded. A.J. Brown, we see it get traded all the time. Team gives up a first-round pick, maybe a mid-round pick. New team signs him to a contract extension, and it's done. But if you're San Francisco, yeah, you get worse if you lose Brandon Aiyuk. But is it worth it to find out, to help you find out what you have in Brock Purdy? And Brock Purdy, I'm one of the last non-believers. And part of it, yes, is where he was drafted. But part of it also is I have a very hard time separating his production based on the situation that he's in. So, for example, if Josh Allen was in San Francisco and Brock Purdy was in Buffalo, does anyone in the world actually think that Brock Purdy would put up 44 touchdowns last year like Josh Allen did? No, of course not. It's Kyle Shanahan, it's Trent Williams, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's Deebo Samuel, it's George Kittle, it's Brandon Aiyuk. It's this unbelievable infrastructure and coach that got Jimmy Garoppolo into a Super Bowl, that's gotten Mr. Irrelevant to being the MVP favorite in Week 15 last season. And this is just a little contract mechanism that I don't know that everybody fully knows, but because he was drafted, him being Brock Purdy, because he was drafted, he can't sign a new contract yet. It's got to be 3 years. So if he was undrafted, they would be up to pay him right now. All the talk that you see and hear about Tua and Jordan Love and Dak and Trevor Lawrence before he signed his deal and Jared Goff before he signed him, it would be happening with Brock Purdy. And that would be an insane negotiation. Like, would you pay him? Would you give $55 million a year to Brock Purdy based on what you've seen? Because the stats would say, of course. But when these guys aren't there, when even just one of them isn't there, it drops significantly in terms of his production. So that is with McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Aiyuk, Deebo, those numbers. And the passer rating is still excellent, over 100, but it drops significantly. The production drops significantly. You say, okay, Danny, obvious point. When an excellent player is gone, the production dips. But they're about to lose Brandon Aiyuk for the whole season. Last year, it was completely uncharacteristic, the amount of health luck that San Francisco had. McCaffrey and Kittle played every game. They only played 16, but they sat the last week because they were just resting before the playoffs. Brandon Aiyuk missed one game last year. So if I'm San Francisco, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm John Lynch, I'm the ownership group there, I'm thinking, all right, can Kyle Shanahan do this with literally anyone? Because with Brock Purdy, he seems to have done it with literally anyone. And if we pay this guy $50 or $60 million a year, which again, based on the stats, is exactly what it says he's worth, you're going to have a lot more games without those guys. And by the way, the numbers without Trent Williams, just Trent Williams, it drops even more dramatically. The passer rating without Trent Williams, because the rest of that offensive line has been a real problem, it's in the high 80s. Now, again, Trent Williams, first ballot Hall of Famer. It's only been 3 games. He's 35. You can play well into your late 30s as an offensive lineman. But if I'm San Francisco, I'm sitting here thinking, we have dealt this guy pocket aces for 2 straight years. And we're not getting rid of the coach anytime soon. Not rooting for injuries, obviously. But there is something to be gleaned from maybe a sprained ankle, twisted knee, bum shoulder, a little bit of rest, just like few games off in the middle of a year to give Brock Purdy less than ideal circumstances and situations, just to know at the end of this year what you're paying that guy. Because if you pay him that much money, you're not going to be able to do it with everybody else. And then you are going to be saying that Brock Purdy elevates the talent around him. And I don't think that's been proven yet. In fact, the numbers say that it absolutely hasn't. Kyle Shanahan, he elevates Brock Purdy clearly. Those excellent players elevate Brock Purdy clearly. Brandon Aiyuk, he'll go somewhere else, and we'll start to get a little bit more information on whether or not Purdy is good enough to elevate everyone else around him when he doesn't have ideal situations. Let's go to Ashley with the news.
No.
Turn on the news.
This is the fantasy football general manager. I'm like, no, I want to make a starting 5 for Team USA. Like that's what I really enjoy. And you see this collection of talent together in Vegas over the weekend for the first time. And like I knew, and I was following the select camps, and then you like actually see them on the court and you see the 12 names. And I know this will sound sacrilegious. I know it sounds ridiculous, but this is the most talented Team USA roster we've ever had. It is top to bottom more talented than the Dream Team. Now, the Dream Team is more impactful. The Dream Team will win by a higher margin of victory. It wasn't fair, right? It was the first time NBA players were allowed to play. Charles Barkley's famous line about Angola. I don't know a lot about Angola, but Angola's in trouble. Like the rest of the world has caught up to USA basketball. Canada's got a good team. France has a good team. Obviously, the best players, Luka and Joker, it's spread out around the country, Giannis, or around the world. So obviously, the rest of the world has caught up in a macro sense. But in terms of 12 people on a team together, this team, I agree with Steve Kerr, it's got 12 Hall of Famers. And you just look at past Team USA rosters, it's not the same top to bottom level of dominance. The 2020 team won gold. Team USA has won gold 4 years in a row. They only have 1 loss in those 4 gold medal runs, and it was the last Olympics, 2020, to France. And then they avenged it in a close gold medal game. But that 2020 team, Jeremy Grant was on the team. JaVale McGee was on the team. Trivia question. Does anyone know who Keldon Johnson was or is? He's still with us. He's got a gold medal from 2020. No disrespect to Keldon Johnson. He's not exactly Devin Booker or Tyrese Halliburton, who might be the 12th man on this team. 2016, Harrison Barnes and DeAndre Jordan. Nice players, served a role, but not all-time guys, not Hall of Famers. The 2008 team, the Redeem team, probably the most famous Team USA team since the Dream Team. That team, Michael Redd, Tayshaun Prince. I just don't see how this team loses, and they've got every motivation to be locked in and be dominant. We can start with LeBron. It's the last title he's ever going to win, and I don't say that disparagingly. He turns 40 in December. The Lakers struck out in free agency. They lost in 5 to the Nuggets. They've needed the play-in series to get into the playoffs the last couple of years. The Lakers are not close to being a title team in the Western Conference. Kevin Durant, one of the best scorers in Team USA history. Steph Curry, he somehow